So the topic for today is multiplying polynomials. Something that you might remember it as from maybe junior high is foiling. And so remember it was FOIL was first, outer, inner, last. Okay. So we're basically foiling today, but I'm changing it up a little bit. Actually, let's just call it FOIL. No ing there so that you remember. Okay. So remember it's first, outer, inner, last. Okay. And so what I want to show you is I want to show you another way of looking at this, because there's sometimes when FOIL may not always work. For example, in number 2, where we have two things here in the first parenthesis, but if you look in the second one, see how there's 3 things in there? FOIL gets kind of confusing sometimes, so I want to give you guys another method for how to multiply these polynomials, okay? So in number 1, what I'm going to do is we have this first parenthesis here, right? So I'm going to label the first thing as 1, and then the second thing as 2. Okay, so the first thing I called number 1, the second thing I called number 2. In the second parenthesis, what I want to do is use letters. So I'm going to call the first thing A, and then the second thing B. Okay, and basically the way this works is you want one of every combination. So I want 1A, I want 1B, I want 2A, and I want 2B. And the way that we figure this out is we multiply them together, okay? And so if we do 1A, x times x, so 1A is x times x, which is x squared, okay? 1B would be x times negative 1. Oops, let's not have that there. So x times negative 1, x times negative 1 is negative x. 2A would be 4, positive 4, times x. So 4 times x is 4x. And then 2b would be 4 times negative 1. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Okay? And all I have here is I just need to collect like terms. So x squared, there's nothing else here that has a squared, so it stays by itself. Negative x plus 4x is positive 3x. Then I have this negative 4 who's by himself, so I just leave him there. So final answer for this is x squared plus 3x minus 4. So number 2 is an example of one where the foiling gets kind of weird, because in the second parenthesis, if you guys can see here, the second parenthesis has 3 things in there. Okay, so let's try and follow that pattern that I was going with in number 1, and I know it's a little different and a little weird, but go with me on it here. So first parenthesis are our numbers. So 1 and 2, I got 3 things in the second one, so remember second parentheses are letters A, B, and C. Okay, so I need 1A, I need 1B, I need 1C, 2A, 2B, and 2C. So here we go. 1A is 2 times 3, which is 6, positive 6. 1B is 2 times positive 5y, which is positive 10y. 1c is 2 times negative 4y squared, which is 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, and then drop down that y squared. 2a is negative y times 3, which is negative 3y. 2b is negative y times 5y, okay, which would be negative 5y squared. 2c, negative y times negative 4y squared, which is negative times negative will make it positive. Y times y squared would end up giving me y to the third, okay? And so we got to collect like terms. I'm looking at this line that I just wrote here, the most bottomest line here. It's really long, and so I used to get really intimidated by these kinds of things. So what I would do is, after I'm done combining them, or using them at least, I would just cross them out so I know I'm finished. So let's start with the 6. Is there anything in the line here that's just a number I could combine with 6? No, okay. So I'm going to cross it out and write it here on the bottom. I'm moving on to 10y. Is there anything else in here that's just a y? Right here, this negative 3, right? So I have 10 minus 3 is 7y. Okay, done with the y's. So I'm canceling them out. Moving on here to the squareds. Is there anything else here that's squared? Right here, right? This negative 5y squared. So I have a negative 8 minus 5 is negative 13y squared. Done with those guys. The only thing left is 4y to the third, and there's nobody to pair that up with, so it just stays that way. And so this is an okay answer, but a better answer would be for you to write this in an order. So just like in English, you guys have a way you're supposed to structure your sentences. In math, that's the same way. So the way that this works is when there's only one variable, so see how there's only one letter here? The way this works is you would take the biggest exponent thing, which is 4y to the third, and that goes first. Okay? The next biggest one is negative 13y squared. Next is 7y. And last is 6. Okay? And so you basically, when there's only, again, this is only when there's one variable, same variable, one letter, you go from the biggest exponent to the smallest. So it goes 3, 2, 1, and then nothing. Okay, biggest exponent to the smallest. Another thing to remember is, like for example, I put negative 13y squared. When you're ordering them, you have to take the sign too. So you can't just take this 13y squared. It has to be negative 13y squared. Okay, so take all the signs as well when you're ordering them. This one's a little trickier because I put two variables, but it's not a big deal. You guys are pros like we proven yesterday. So first parenthesis becomes 1, next one becomes 2. We have A, we have B, and then we have C. Okay? So what am I doing again? I want 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, and then 2C. Okay? So 1A, 2y times xy would be what? 2xy squared. Okay? So there's the 2 drops down because there's nothing, well, there's a 1 to multiply it with. There's no x to multiply, so it just drops down. Y times y is y squared. Okay? 1b is 2y times y squared. So they're both, or negative y squared, I mean. So we have negative 2y to the third. 1c is 2y times positive 3x squared. So 2 times 3 is positive 6. There's an x squared there, and then there's a y. So something to remember, you guys, even though the y was first when you multiply, it's just prettier when you put them in alphabetical order. So put the x first and then the y. So x squared y. Okay? 2a, we get x times xy. So we end up with positive x squared y. 2b, x times negative y squared. So I end up with a negative number, right? Because I have one negative. And then there's nothing to multiply with x, nothing for y squared. We just drop it down. 2c, x times 3x squared. We end up with positive 3x to the third. Okay? And so let's simplify this. So starting from the left, is there anything that has an xy squared? So yes, there's some that have xy, but the exponents have to match exactly. So I need something that has an x, that has just an x, and I need something that has a y squared. So I see something right there, right? Okay, so if I have a 2 minus 1, that means I have one of those guys left over. Okay, so those guys are done. So what I would do when I was younger is I would cross them out so I know I took care of them already. Okay, I have a negative 2y to the third. Is there anything that's just negative 2y to the third? No, so I'm just going to rewrite it. Okay. For the next one, 6x squared y. So I need a x squared y. Right next to it, right? Right here. 1, 2, 3. So I have an x squared y right there. So positive 6 plus 1 would be a 7xy, or x squared y. Done with those guys, cross it out. The only thing I have left is plus 3x to the third. And so this one, if you want to write it in a nice order, you start in alphabetical order. So x comes first. So you start with the biggest x, and then the next x would be plus 7x squared y, and then plus xy squared, and then minus 2y to the third. So start in alphabetical order with and that's the one that's going to be the biggest, okay? So you go x to the third, x squared, x, nothing. And then the second letter goes from increasing order. So start with the first one in alphabetical order. That one's going to go from biggest to smallest. And then if you do that one correctly, naturally the other letter that comes after it would be going in increasing order. So if you look at the y's, it goes no y, there's 1y, 2, and 3, okay? So the first letter that comes in order goes first, and it goes from the biggest to the smallest. If you do that correctly, then the second letter should be going from nothing to the biggest, okay? So let's skip actually down to number 5, because these are the tougher ones, I think. And let's look at number 5 together and see how we do, okay? So you label it this time, and we will work on this, okay? So I have 1, 2, 3, and then remember second parentheses are our letters A and B. Okay, so I need a 1A, 1A, I need a 1B, I need a 1C, oh no, I don't have a 1C. I need a 1A, 1B, 2A, and then 2B, 3A, and then 3B. Okay, 1A would be 3x squared times 2x, so I get 3 times 2 is 6, 6x to the third. 1b, 3x squared times positive y, so they basically just combine, they look like that, okay? 2a, negative 2xy times 2x, so the negative 2 and 2 become negative 4. X times x is x squared, nothing for the y, so it just stays, and then keep going for me. Okay, so I'm going to keep working on this one while you guys do this too. You can check your answer. And then remember, we want to collect like terms next. So 6x to the third, there's nothing, so I'm going to cross it out. I need an x squared y. They're right next to each other. So I have 3 minus 4 is a negative x squared y. Okay, done with that. Now I need a xy squared, which is right here. So negative 2 plus 2 gives me 0, so they actually cancel out. And all I'm left with is y to the third. And let's make sure they're in a good order. So the first letter that comes in alphabetical order is x, and we get 3, 2, nothing, so we're okay. Then the y's go nothing, 1, 3, and hold the circle, and we're done. Perfect. Okay, so take your time on these. You'll even see that I had a little hiccup. I kind of blanked out here around the 3A's part, and so it's easy to make a mistake. Take your time. There's no rush, okay? Why don't you guys try number 4, and I'll work it out here. I'm not going to chat this time, so I'll work it out here, and you can check your answer. So just don't forget to take the quiz at the end. If you have any questions, again, please ask me some questions so that I can help you in class, okay? So here we go.